Round of applause for Owen.
Amazing. Hello, hi. What a great talk, by the way, from Abby. Oh my gosh, incredible. We love to see it. I've had a full Red Bull. I feel like a kid who's just been given caffeine for the first time. Anyway, enough about that. I'm going to talk about 2D animated trailers. Whoa, amazing, incredible. Whether they're worthwhile, we're going to do some arguments, for and against. And then we're going to do kind of a deep dive into, that process of making a 2D animated trailer if you are to go down that process in the future. Before I start, my name is Owen Trett, pronouns he, they. Here is my blue sky, please follow me, I am lonely. I am the senior video editor for Poncle. If you don't know what Poncle is, it is the studio behind Vampire Survivors. If you don't know what Vampire Survivors is, I'm so sorry. It is one of the games of all time. It is a roguelite bullet hell thing. You attack automatically, and after a while, your screen gets so bombarded by enemies that it becomes some sort of weird, freaky screensaver. During my time as a video editor, this is my 4th year in the industry, I've made around 20 plus trailers, not just for Vampire Survivors, but also for games such as The Cabin Factory, Rusty's Retirement, Gourdlets, all of that lovely stuff. I also do work for Limit Break Mentorship, shout out to Dan. Shout out to Limit Break, you folks are incredible, an absolute shining light in the industry. I'm also very trash, but we'll get into that another time. Vampire Survivors has a pretty interesting marketing strategy. Whoa, big words on the screen, incredible, we love to see it. The game did very, very well. It's kind of an understatement. We won 3 BAFTAs, including Evolving Game recently, Best Game in 2022, and Game Design, I believe. We are currently the 6th highest rated game on Steam, which is mad, above Hades, Portal, and even Gary's Mod, which is an insane concept. We have a very, very dedicated community. We give a lot to the community, and therefore they give a lot back to us. And it means that we can release a lot of cheap DLC and free updates. And in that cheap DLC and free updates, we're able to make 2D animated trailers. Whoa, coming back to the thing that the talk is about. Amazing. So, our trailers are made by the absolutely fantastic US-based animation studio, Studio Yotta. They've done work for Brawlhalla, the Sonic Mania trailers. Also in terms of TV, they've done Rick and Morty, Smiling Friends even. Big Smiling Friends head, so love that. And the process usually is we give them kind of an intro talk. They go off, they make the trailer, and then we come back with a very, very cool animated trailer. That's kind of the process in like a top-line layman's terms way, but I'll go more into the deep details as we go on. Here is, if it plays, yes, an example of one of the animated trailers. This was for our collaboration with Konami on Castlevania, on our Castlevania DLC that we did late last year. Please play. Come on, yes, okay, amazing, incredible. And the sound, we love to see it. Oh, the soundtrack. And then we just have gameplay of the updates. So, wow, cool, amazing, very flashy, very, very slick animation right there that's used to announce that we're doing a collaboration with Castlevania. When Luca, the lead developer of Vampire Survivors, was like, yeah, we're going to go through this process of doing an animated trailer for our Castlevania update, I was like, that's amazing. You know, the community loves our 2D animated trailers. Who would think that this is such a bad idea? So this is Derek Liu. If you don't know who Derek Liu is, he is probably my biggest inspiration. Huge, amazing trailer editor behind Firewatch, Half-Life Alyx, Psychonauts 2, all the Among Us like VR trailers. He made a very, very good point about 10 months ago. And I act as if I'm not upset, but in reality, I'm crying on the inside. So he made arguments that maybe animated trailers aren't really the way to go. For example, they are very pricey, very, very pricey. We are talking, I spoke to some trailer editors about this, £500 to £2,500 per second of animation. And when your trailers are about 60 seconds to even 90 seconds, that price adds up very, very quickly. So, don't use it to announce your game, especially if, you know, your game doesn't really look anything like the 2D animated trailer. I think for your starting beats for announcing a game should be purely the gameplay in a most honest way possible. You want your audience to be like, this is what the game is like, and this is what it's going to play like. And therefore, it could confuse your audiences. You know, unless your game is like, let's say, Unbeatable, where it's got a very kind of 2D animated style, or let's say Scott Pilgrim, people are going to feel like, oh, this isn't actually a 2D animated game. This is completely different, and you'd hate to confuse your audiences. Also, not guaranteed any attention if you're not part of a show. If you're just posting this online on like X or Blue Sky or even TikTok, again, you're not guaranteed attention even if you put all of that money into a high production value trailer. You might get attention if you post it on a big showcase like the Game Awards, Summer Games Fest, Day of the Devs, all that stuff. But again, you need to make sure that you're hitting these beats strategically. And key thing is, which I've kind of described already, the gameplay looks nothing alike. And in the end, you get these really, really horrible comments that subconsciously put into the limelight the graphic style of the game, which you don't really want to have early on. You get comments like these. Comments that are talking about, you know, the fact that it looks like a mobile game, or that they hate these 8-bit graphics, you know, because anything that isn't brown and AAA and a shooter with like, you know, 500 million polygons is terrible. So at the end of the day, you can get comments like these that bring the graphic style of your game into the forefront, which sucks, especially if you have a game like Vampire Survivors that's a very pixel art heavy game and, you know, has a very stylistic style like that. So those are a lot of arguments kind of against going down the 2D animated trailer route, which is a very interesting way to start the talk. So I'm going to use this as an opportunity to be like, wait, no, actually, trust me on this. It might be a good idea if you're in a very, very specific timeline within your marketing strategy. I spoke to Thomas, founder of Future Friends, also shout out to Abby, about this, who was helping us early on in Vampire Survivors, especially with our early animated trailers, about why exactly we go down this route. And I think the key thing, can't really see that because of the black bar, but victory lap, basically, is when you've announced your game, and I think when you're in a lucky position where you've kind of been built that audience and it's been successful, you use it as an opportunity to celebrate almost, to showcase, look at us, you know, we've done a really, really good job. You know, we're kind of giving back to the audience in this manner. It's a treat for the community because they're able to see the characters that they love, they're able to see the game that they've put so much time into showcased in a different manner that showcases respect and love and adoration for something that people have put a lot of time and effort into. Also, for an update like the Castlevania update, an animated trailer can really help condense the essence of an update. Again, if you're just showing gameplay, sometimes that's not really enough to showcase how it really feels as a consumer to play this title. So let's say seeing the Vampire Survivors characters mixed with the Castlevania characters, which is kind of a huge thing because Vampire Survivors is very based off Castlevania. Again, it generates that feel and that tone instantly through animation in ways that gameplay simply cannot do. It also breaks up gameplay. If you're watching, let's say, 2 minutes of a Vampire Survivors trailer that's just gameplay, it can get very, very stale very quickly. So it engages your audience and kind of hooks them as quickly as possible, and it means that you're able to kind of showcase that feel of the update and then the gameplay to kind of give further context to that. Also, it highlights character design and lore, and if you have a dedicated fan base, especially with games that have a plethora of different characters, it's a good way to kind of, celebrate each character and their designs. You know, in our Emerald Diorama trailer that we did recently, we showcased Giovanna, which is a trans witch character that we have in Vampire Survivors, and I think being able to showcase and highlight that character in an animation way, we had a lot of audiences say, oh, it's great to see that representation. It's great to see that validity within our marketing strategy. Also, for marketers, it's a very good way to create key art. It means you don't have to hire a key art artist. We kind of take frames from the animations as well to create the key art that we use in a lot of our store pages and end slates and all of that lovely stuff. Also GIFs. Any social media managers love GIFs. Great for reactions, great for, you know, just adding general elevation to text posts. Again, an opportunity to further elevate your social media presence. Also, on that previous slide where I was talking about all the negative comments that we get from these 2D animated trailers, they were actually quite hard to find. These were very, very easy to find. This love, this adoration of seeing our characters showcased in a way that is true, that is, you know, almost like a Netflix anime. You know, people making links to anime within our silly little pixel art game, that's huge for us. That's massive. And it really, really creates and emboldens that bond between the two, between our audience and ourselves. Cool. So hopefully at this point, if you're in a situation where you have a game that's successful and you want to kind of do a victory lap, again, very, very niche position to be in, I'm going to kind of go through how exactly that process is made. So, part one is conceptualization. As people are aware, I'm just a little guy at the end of the day, and I'm a little guy with loads of ideas and a massive, massive issue with imposter syndrome. You know, I'm coming up with ideas like outside of work, on my runs, during the gym. How can I make these ideas seem presentable to an animation team of dozens, if not more, amazingly talented and successful animators? So, we want to have as much detail in this conceptualization as process as possible, as these animation teams are going to be working on a frame-by-frame basis and on a shot-by-shot basis. It's a lot of time to be put onto this project that's condensed into, like, I want to say like 45 to 60 seconds. I write a script or a beat sheet of basically a bullet-pointed list of like what the animation is going to be like in order of narrative. I come up with a nice, pretty, fancy deck that I present to them. That includes locations, character design, visual style, again, referencing anything that I can to help them in that process. With Vampire Survivors, we're lucky to have a composer, which we liaise with to build a kind of a scratch audio track that the animation team can follow. Again, really, really helps them with pacing and timings, which is a godsend. Also mood boards. Again, if you don't have any specific ideas, but you have a feeling that you want to showcase, having mood boards, you know, building something on Pinterest is a very, very nice key way to make sure that you're on the same page as your animation teams. Also other trailers as inspiration. You're not working within a vacuum at the end of the day. You're working within an industry where there's loads of content that already exists. So using trailers as inspiration, seeing examples of work that you really like, again, is a really good way to get onto that same page. Here is an example of the deck that I used for the Castlevania updates for Vampire Survivors with Studio Yotta. You can see here how I have this kind of 3-line brief, and then kind of a bullet-pointed list of what happens in what order during the animation. I also go through locations inspired by different Dracula's castles throughout the Castlevania series, and then characters. Again, with our game being very pixel art heavy, we kind of take a lot from our fans and fan art to kind of help solidify the designs of these characters. Again, use your fans. They are extremely, extremely important in situations such as these. So, let's say you've briefed them on this animation, and you're all done. You go off, you sit on a lounge chair in the Caribbean whilst they go off and make this beautiful animation. No, that's not the process. That's not the case, really. We have like hundreds and hundreds of emails, going back and forth between us and the animation teams through the most specific of details, because at the end of the day, it's a very, very specific process that they work on a frame-by-frame basis for. We share a lot of ideas, and what's great about Studio Yotta is they will also present their own ideas to give back to us, which is massive. Again, more heads are better than one. You're kind of collaborating on ideas. We love to see it. We also review a lot of character designs, and as we're working with Konami on Castlevania, this is kind of where the main back and forth comes to fruition, is in the designs of Simon and Richter, making sure that specific parts of their designs are showcased. We pace through different storyboards, get an idea of timings, are we spending too much time on this shot? Are we spending not enough time on this shot, etc., etc. Again, having a soundtrack really helps with that they can work towards. We send them a lot of in-game references to enemies, weapons, all of that lovely stuff. And then I sync it to a timeline. One of the key skills that you need to have with working with an animation team is squinting. The process usually is you have the conceptualization, the lines, and then the coloring and rendering. And usually they animate with just the lines. And if you're giving feedback during the coloring and rendering stage, they have to go back quite far in the process to change the lines, to change specific parts of the animation. You don't want to do this. You don't want to be that guy at the end of the process that's like, oh, actually, I don't like the pose that this character's in for this shot, because they have to go back so far to change the lines and then render it. It's horrible. So you have to squint during the line stage to kind of understand, okay, this is how it's going to look like in the future. And that's really important, and it's a very, very key skill to have. This idea of trusting the process and having understanding early on as if it's going to fit the brief or not. Here's an example of some early kind of character concepts and designs, again, where a lot of back and forth happened in the emails. Again, uncolored, but during this process is kind of where we had to confirm, whether the design was as we intended or not. And here's an example of an animatic that they sent us very early on in the process. So you can kind of see how there's really a mix of different areas of completion. Some are kind of very thin lines, some are very thick lines. This was showing kind of flashes of lines, some color. Because they're not really going to do it in order of the trailer. Again, that's just not including any character design, but just the fluidity of the animation. So at the end of the day, you need to use this as an opportunity to kind of early on gauge, is this working for us? Is this not working for us? Etc., etc. Squinting is incredibly, incredibly important. Anyway, on to the final touches. So this is where I come in as the video editor. So I will sync the last bits of the animation to music. I will add the gameplay. This is usually where most of my workflow comes in, of recording gameplay, adding it after the fact, finding a good transition between the animation to the actual gameplay, whether that's a hard cut or whether that's a more kind of interesting animation that I make in, like, let's say After Effects. I animate the end slate, which luckily we already have most of it from the animation in the first place. Amazing, reduces the amount of work from me. I create variations for different storefronts, so Switch, PlayStation, Xbox, you know, all of those lovely platforms. I do a final polishing check. Again, this is like a 60-second animation. There is a lot going on. You have to kind of really dig deep into every single shot to make sure that everything's rendered correctly, that the shadows are all good, that all of the effects are being used. If it's got sound effects, you know, if they're mixed correctly. There's a lot going on all at once. So, hopefully, during this talk, I've given you enough information about 2D animated trailers, and I'm just going to round off with some conclusions. So, only use as a victory lap if there's an existing fan base of your game. Communicate everything you can to the animation companies, because at the end of the day, the more communication there is, the better the project and the less back and forth that there is. Be prepared to squint to see how early versions are going to work. And the animation isn't all, it's only one part of the process. And as a video editor, it definitely isn't just one part of the process. Also, another thing is just passion. You know, finding a animation studio that's as passionate about the IP as you are is incredibly important, because that passion is definitely showcased in the end product. Project. There we go. Cool, amazing. I'm not sure if do you have time for questions?
You do, yeah.
Wonderful stuff, amazing. Yeah, I'm going to open the floor to some questions. Please be nice to me. Yes.
I'm curious about the way that you listed out the brief to the animation company. Is there a specific language and template that you use, or does that kind of differ from studio to studio, or was that something you came up with on your own? I noticed it was like you put in capitals like push in, push out, that kind of thing.
Yeah, let me just find, there we go. Really, really good question, genuinely. So I think it's really subjective in that manner. I come from a film and TV background, and I've written kind of film and TV scripts in the past, so I use a lot of that language to kind of showcase you know, how exactly I want some shots to look, how exactly I want some transitions to look, because I already have that idea in my mind. You know, I have, yeah, in capitals, like the idea that the screen splits in half and then it continues to split into a kaleidoscope. Just really weird language. But I think at the end of the day, it's more down to how you see it happening. You don't have to kind of have an understanding of like filmic language. I think as long as you can kind of reference it through other media, like examples in film and TV and games that you really like, or just, I don't know, like talk about a feeling, you know, like I use the term kaleidoscope here because I don't think that's really a kind of like filmic term. I think that's just kind of like a visual motif. So again, it's just kind of like trying to communicate in as kind of best terms as possible your ideas presented to an animation team. And you can be as specific as possible, as silly as possible. And I think as long as you know, it's communicated in some way, that's what's important. I hope that answers the question. It's a bit rambly.
Thank you.
No worries. Yes.
How long did the whole process take, like from start to finish?
Gosh, I want to say, I think each of our trailers usually are different in terms of timings because of just a slew of factors. This trailer, I think, was in time for, I believe it was Day of the Devs last year. So I think from start to finish, production was around 2 months, but we had started thinking about this trailer, like, I want to say 3-4 months beforehand. Just getting that kind of beat sheet done, making sure that Luca was happy with the narrative, and then of course sending over to our animation team. Also, I will say that like as well as this, we had other projects overlapping as well. So this isn't the only project that we had ongoing all at one time. We're also working on the trailer for Emerald Diorama. But I'd say usually 2-3 months is kind of a sweet spot, but usually 9 times out of 10 they will ask for more time, because the more time that you give them, the better the project will be at the end of the day. Cool. You in the front.
Hello. How much back and forth do you have with the client?
A lot of back and forth. Like, I think I was looking at our email threads the other day, and I think we had upwards of 150 emails between myself, the kind of animation team liaison, my marketing manager, just kind of going, solidifying ideas, sending them imagery from the game, confirming like how they want some design pieces to look, etc., etc. So yeah, there is a lot of back and forth. But again, that communication is key, because at the end of the day, you want to have that idea communicated. Yeah. Cool. There was one more, I think. Yes.
Yeah. So, did you have a piece of music in mind at the beginning of the process, or was that kind of chosen afterwards? And how did that affect the working with the animation team and the editing afterwards?
Yeah, sure. So this was actually the first time that we were given a piece of music that we sent to the animation team during the briefing process. Usually what would happen in most of our other trailers is they would send us the animation with some sound effects, and then I would add in the music afterwards. But I think it's better to send them a music track early on, because it means that they have something to follow during the animation process in terms of like cutting to the beats, having kind of certain shots happen on certain musical transitions. I think we had an idea of what we wanted already, because I think Filippo and Daniele, who had done music for us, had already created a lot of music for the Castlevania update, and a lot of it is kind of this medley of different Castlevania tracks together. So Luca was very specific as to how he wanted it to be, and I think in that we had that bit of music done very, very early, and I think that really boosted the kind of production value at the end of the day.
I have a question, if nobody else does.
Sure.
If you could work on a trailer for any IP in this style, like 2D animated trailer, but you can pick whatever game, what would be your game?
Oh, Undertale, easily. Yeah. I love Undertale. Yeah. Or just any kind of like really weird, goofy, like successful indie game. Yeah. Like I don't know, Night in the Woods as well. That's a huge kind of inspiration of mine. But again, making sure that it's a game that's already, successful and has that existing fan base that a 2D animated trailer would be warranted. Yeah. Cool. That's me. Go have a fantastic lunch.
Thank you, Owen. That was super interesting.